What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. In this video, I'm gonna kind of just talk about how I was able to find my trading edge in about 72 hours. I'm gonna go step by step of what I kind of did, and you guys can just kind of follow along as well. But without further need to be said, I want to make this video quick and I want to get straight to the point. Let's jump into it. So the first thing I think that needs to be clarified is just identifying what an edge is. First things first, before we identify what an edge is, let's identify what are we trying to solve? What problem are we trying to solve? So these are for the people that are constantly losing money in trading. If you're constantly losing money in trading, then this is probably the best thing you can do besides buying any course or anything like that. For the people who are making money and who are already profitable, this video may not be for you because it's not towards more of optimizing profitability, but it's more to just getting there. And I think that's the key point that a lot of traders missing out, including myself. When I was, kind of back testing strategies, I kind of went on this long hiatus of just not even trading because I was just so frustrated of just back testing and just failing every time trying to improve my profitability. When I had to remember at the beginning, the only problem I was trying to solve is just becoming somewhat profitable, even if it's a little bit above break even. So if you are losing money in trading now and you're losing a lot of money, and you're consistently unprofitable, then this video is for you. Second, let's talk into what an edge is. So I've been scouring YouTube for hours and hours trying to figure out what a trading edge is. I've been viewing some of the high class traders, like some of the traders at S&B Capital. I've been looking at some podcasts, and I've just been trying to understand what is an edge and how do I go about finding one. Because a lot of people talk about you need edge, but what is edge? So my simple definition of edge is just simply a trading strategy that provides profitability over 20 trades. That's it. That's how I kind of go about defining it. It's different for everyone, but it's just a simple formula. It's just some type of trading strategy that provides profitability, which means that it's going to be profitable, or it's, increasing in, instead of you being negative, you're positive over a certain sample size of trades. So whether it be 20, 50, 100, whatever it is, that's how I go about defining edge. And that's all edge is to me now, because it's very simple to identify that. If you have a strategy that's able to make profits over 20 trades, then all you got to do is just stick to it. We're just focusing on finding strategies that are profitable. There is a very simple step-by-step process that I'm going to show you guys right here today, that I just want to clarify that what edge means to me is just simply a strategy that is proven to be profitable over a series of trades. And that's what a lot of, I noticed traders that's the common factor, the common idea when it comes to edge. Second, I noticed by viewing a lot of the traders at S&B Capital, a lot of them have multiple strategies. They have multiple plays. They have something called a playbook. So I'm going to be kind of showing you my context of my playbook and how I'm going about it. It really opened my eyes to having multiple strategies instead of just one. I used to get frustrated when one strategy didn't produce how I would like it. For example, when I traded the Fibonacci, it was producing profitability for me, but it would take so long to reach this profitability, and that's when I kind of get worried. I wish 2 months ago that I just could have added another strategy that was just as profitable, so I wouldn't be stressed out so much about the time frame and all of that. But that's something that you learn with this experience. It's something that I've learned over time. I'm hoping that you can learn from my experience that you don't need to just have one strategy. Sometimes it's good to just have one. If you're having a hard time just sticking to a strategy, then it's best that you just have one. But if you notice that you're a very disciplined trader and you're not really having too much of a hard time sticking with one strategy, then it's okay to look at another second strategy and see what the results is. Last thing before I jump into the actual step-by-step, and I feel like all of these points are important and I want to make them very clear before I move forward. Drop win rate and risk to reward ratio when looking at your strategies. When you are taking the time to build profitability, right? If you don't have any profitability at all, I really don't think you need to be looking at those two factors. I stressed myself out so much that I was growing gray hairs by focusing on my win rate and risk to reward ratio. Even though I was profitable, I was like, how do I get my win rate up? How do I get my risk to reward ratio up? And it stressed me out so much when I totally forgot the problem that I'm trying to solve for. And it's key to remember the problem that you're trying to solve for is not to go from unprofitable to insanely profitable. It's to go from unprofitable to break even, and then from break even to profitable, and then from profitable to extremely profitable. That's the steps that you need to be taking. Don't try and jump from step 0 to step 4. It's not going to work like that. So that's something that I had to learn. And when looking at metrics, it's best to get rid of the metric win rate and risk to reward ratio out of your head for now. Now, they're very helpful. You're going to come back to these metrics in the future, but for now, focus on one metric and one metric alone, and it's called profit factor. So all you need to know, profit factor takes your total wins versus your total losses, and then it simply subtracts it. And if you have more left over, if you have a positive balance left over, you will have a profit factor over 1. If you have a negative balance left over, you will have a profit factor below 1. Now, the goal is to have when back testing a strategy, I'm gonna get into all of this, but when looking for an edge, the goal is to find a strategy with a profit factor over 1 and a profit factor that increases over time as well too. So let's go ahead and jump into the screen recording, and let's go ahead and first identify how do we find our edge. Before we jump into the screen sharing, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about again too. And all of these things are just knowledge and wisdom that I've been learning through experience. First things first, when looking at trading strategies, all trading strategies are just a personal trading style. They're just basically frameworks that are based off of other persons or other people's intuitions from their experience from the markets. So what that means is someone who's looked at the markets for 2 years have seen patterns that are seeable from his eyes. And he found a way to put these patterns into words and essentially kind of priming his eyes and his brain to only look for these patterns. Each trading strategy is just simple, different, a different framework for each person. So somebody can have the same concept. For example, you can have the same ICT concept as a YouTuber that you see on YouTube that does really well with the ICT concept and do really bad with it. It's only because the only difference is there's a gap, and that gap is called experience with a strategy. And I've talked about this in the past, but you have to look at every strategy as a progression bar, and you have to max out that progression bar before you can even think of judging it, right? Before you can even think of throwing it away or whatever, right? So first things first, let's talk about how we develop our strategy. And there's mainly 4 to 5 questions that you'll use in order to figure out what your strategy is or what the strategy is. First things first is, what is the trade criteria? So if I can simply explain what this question means, all it means is, what does your brain perceive as a opportunity to try and make money from the market? For some people, if you trade ICT concepts, right, and you trade the 2022 mentorship model, what your trade criteria would look like is simply a rate on liquidity, a market structure shift, and a retracement to a fair value gap. That trade criteria part is the rate on liquidity and the market structure shift. Because once you see those 2 things, you start to look for an entry. So when asking yourself, what is the trade criteria? Ask yourself, what is the few things that I need to see in the market in order to start looking for an entry? So second is, what is your entry and exit criteria? And this is very simple. When do you enter the market and when do you exit? Knowing and having these things planned out before you take the trade is like top tier trading productivity advice, if I could give it, because it eliminates confusion. It eliminates confusion of where you're supposed to get out. It eliminates confusion of when you're supposed to get in. If you can just simply have down on a checklist what you need in order to get into the market and then what you need in order to exit the market, put these things down in a checklist formation. Third question that you should be asking is, what is your time window? I see a lot of traders don't really talk about this, and I was definitely one of them. It is very important to have a specific time window for when you trade. If you're trading all day, bro, please don't do that. Find a specific time window that probably has the most momentum in the market, most volume, and also produces the most results for you. Whatever that may be, you may have to backtest to find out. For me, I just went with simple New York session, because why? I wake up around that time. 2, I'm in New York. I mean, it's just pretty simple. If I was in London, I would probably go with London session. So find what your time window is. It's a very simple question. When are you trading? When are you looking at the markets? And when this time window passes, you no longer look at the market. So the next question is, what is your money management plan? So this is very simple, very easy question to ask. This should eliminate 99% of risk management problems completely, because you're asking yourself, what is your risk management plan, right? Are you dynamic risk? Are you equity risk, right? So if you're below a certain equity amount, right, do you lower your risk? Do you increase your risk? I like to call that dynamic risk management. Are you static risk management? Are you risking the same? For beginners, I recommend, especially if you're just trying to find out what your edge is and you're not quite profitable yet, just start off with static risk because it gives you the most information. There's no, oh, 2 trades, I won with 0.5%, and as soon as I increased my risk, I lost everything. It's none of that. It gives clear, unfiltered data. That's why I like static risk the most. I would suggest go with that. And then second, pick an amount that you're gonna risk per trade. As you see here, I have 1% risk, and that's very simple. Every trade, I'm risking 1%. I don't have to think about how much I'm gonna risk. I don't have to think about the money amount that I'm gonna put up. I know exactly what I may make every single trade on a winning trade, and I know exactly what I'm gonna make on every single losing trade. The next question is, what is your trade management plan? First things first, what is trade management? Trade management is just simply when you're in the trade, how do you go about managing a trade? A lot of people have different ways. If you don't have this planned out, you're gonna notice yourself exiting trades very early, and you're gonna notice yourself giving into a lot of closing trades early and hesitation and all of that nonsense mistakes that just cost us profitability. So I like to have this already planned out. How am I going to manage my trade once I'm in it? So there's 3 main approaches that I know of. 1, set and forget, where you set your TP, you set your SL, and then you just let your trade do whatever you want it to do, right? Or you let it do whatever it does. It either hits your TP and you're happy, or it hits your SL and you're not so happy. But it's one of those things that's gonna happen. There's no guessing. There's no, I might have to get out here and secure a little profit. There's none of that, right? It's either TP or SL. And that's the approach I recommend for a lot of beginners and people who are unprofitable. Just go with that approach first, and then you can develop and build off of that. But it makes things so much easier just having TP, having SL, and not worrying about how to manage your trade. The second approach is taking partials at certain levels. You got this high that's in between your take profit and your original entry. You may want to take partials there. Another one is trailing your stop losses. I know a lot of people do that as well too. That's an interesting one as well. Those are the 3 main ones that I know of. If you know any other ones, drop them in the comment section below. But writing out how you're going to manage your trade before even entering your next trade is very helpful. Now, the next things I have is just some extra comments. So some extra comments, for example, we're just looking at one time frame, 15-minute time frame. We're only trading NAS and SPX or S&P 500. And then, we only will take trades within a certain ratio, whatever like that. And then I have a picture of what my perfect trade looks like. Usually this is after everything happens. Now let's talk about step 2, which is the testing trial. Okay, cool. So the testing trial is big, and it's probably the most important part. I put every strategy that I use through a testing trial. And I treat these testing trials as I'm putting my strategy through prop firm trials. When you look at prop firms, they have three stages. The first stage is the verification stage, where you have to make a certain percentage, usually is 8%. The second stage is the qualification stage. It's to make sure that the first stage wasn't a fluke, right? To make sure that you are actually profitable and you're actually making money from the markets. And then the third is just once you pass phase 1 and phase 2, the third one is so hidden that nobody really talks about, but it's just getting a payout. That's the third stage, right? So they have 3 chances for you to fail. Basically, they have a 3-to-1 risk to reward ratio on you. That's how prop firms made a lot of money. The third phase is just basically getting a payout. So I do the same with every one of my strategies. First things first, I put them through 3 phases. And the first one that we're looking on here is a clear example of one that just didn't work, right? So now how my phases works is the first phase is something called the qualification phase, right? So the qualification phase is basically where I take the strategy, I have my checklist, and I take 20 trades that look exactly the same and follows my checklist 100%. I do not deviate. If it does not check, if it misses one single box on my checklist, I do not take the trade. I want 20 untampered, unaffected trades that can give me the result of what I'm looking for, right? So taking 20 trades, I would like to see what is the profit factor after that. So this is why I call it the qualification phase. Because after that 20 trades I take, if it doesn't have a profit factor over 1, I completely fail the strategy and I no longer move forward with it. Because if the first 20 trades isn't profitable, why continue, right? I need to change. I need to switch it up, right? So that's the first phase. It's phase 1 is the qualification. The second phase is phase 2, which is the verification. So by this time, it will already pass phase 1. So when it passed phase one, it'll have a profit factor over 1, right? So it passes phase one. But I want to verify, make sure this strategy really has an edge. So for me, I put it through another 20 trades. So by the end of phase two, I'll have 40 trades that are exactly followed by the checklist, and pretty much will have a profit factor determining on what the profit factor is. It'll either be profitable or not profitable. So now here's the thing. Phase two, you take 20 trades again, of course, and then you look to see what the result is. Now there's an if and else statement here. So in coding, if and else just basically is conditional rendering. So if this happens, then we're gonna go here. If that happens, then we're gonna go over there, right? So now this is how I use it in trading. So now if after taking 20 trades, let's say the first 20 trades in the qualification stage, the profit factor was 1. And then the second 20 trades in the verification stage, the profit factor increased to maybe 1.5. Then I will not put it through phase three, because that's a good sign. If a strategy profit factor increases over the sample size of trades, then you can kind of expect it to continue to increase. So then in your space, that you don't need to put it through an extra phase three, which I'll talk about later, but you already have a good sign. The profit has an edge. It has a profit factor over 1, and you can add it to your playbook. And that's essentially what happened here with the Blitz strategy. So for example, I give my strategies wonky names. So I have everything kind of listed out. It was a friend that kind of gave me this strategy. He was kind of talking about it with me. I put it through the test and it passed. And it passed with really good colors. Phase one, it had a profit factor that was a little bit above 1. And then phase two, it had a profit factor that was way above 1. It went up from the phase one result, and that's good. And that's what I want to see. I'm not too worried about being crazy profitable. All I want to be is just profitable. And this strategy is proven to be profitable. So now it has an edge for me. So I'll have it pass phase one and phase two and phase three automatically. I wouldn't even put it through phase three. Now, this is an example of a strategy that failed phase one. It didn't have a profit factor over 1. Now, here's the second if-else statement, or the second condition. If we put it through phase one, it has a profit factor of 0.5. If we put it through phase one and it has a profit factor of 1.5, and then we put it through phase two, but the profit factor goes down, that's the only time I will continue to phase three. Now, here's the thing. If I put it over, if that profit factor drops below 1 in the second phase, I immediately cancel it. I no longer use the strategy, right? But if it remains above 1, but it just decreased from what the first result or what the first profit factor score was, then I will put it through phase three, which is called the verification stage. Now in the verification stage, this is the hardest part about it. It's putting your strategy through 60 more trades. It's getting 100 total trades and seeing what the end profit factor was before starting to live trade it and use it in live markets. That's where phase three solidifies. Is either this strategy is profitable or it's not. But phase three, you best your butts. You best your butts. You better believe that you're gonna get an answer. So phase three is basically, I want to call it the evaluator. The evaluator, that's not a word. The evaluation, right? Basically, I take 60 more trades. So then in total, I have 100 trades, and I look at the profit factor. If it's over 1, it's going to be, traded in live markets. If it's not, it's scrapped. Now let's talk about when a strategy fails to have a profit factor over 1 in any of these challenges. If that does happen, all I do, you can do 2 things. You can either 1, completely eliminate the strategy and never trade it again. Don't recommend it. You spent a lot of time learning it. Don't do that. 2, change 1 variable. So you remember the questions we had you answer earlier? Change 1 variable about it. Whether it's changing the risk, changing what you define as a trade criteria, changing how you enter the trades, change 1 variable and retry it again. Now that's probably the most beneficial way, because you're not just hopping from strategy to strategy. You're just changing 1 variable and you're trying it again. And you're seeing what the result is. And sometimes you'll get it that it'll be over 20 and it'll produce far better than it did first time. Don't worry about time frames and all of that right now. Time frames is fractal. Don't worry about all that, but you can also change your input. If you was using maybe the 5-minute time frame, try using the 15. See how that works if you don't have anything to change on there. But that's what I do when a strategy fails a challenge. So now you know how I go about building edge. I first ask myself these few questions that I kind of mentioned earlier, and then I put it through the challenge phase and see what were my profit factors. That's the main metric that I look at for now. It's profit factor over everything. That's the main metric I keep in mind. Once I have that metric, I can determine if a strategy has edge or not for me. That's how I'm going about finding edges in strategies. And then I'm just gonna add these strategies to my playbook and collect them like a Pokemon collector, and I'm gonna collect them all. Now, I might not collect them all, but I'm gonna collect a few. And that's what I recommend for anybody who's just unprofitable. If you're not making money from the markets, if you're not even hitting break even, brother, try that out. I think it's very helpful, and I would recommend it to anybody. It's low cost, it's low cost. It wouldn't even cost you $1. Notion is free. And now, how do we go about back test? It's completely low cost. Now, there's two things that you're gonna need for this exercise. One, you're gonna need FX Replay, and two, you're gonna need some type of journal. Notion is free, and FX Replay has a 5-day free trial every time. You can literally sign up for it, put your email in, let the 5 days run out, get the back tested trades that you need, and then just create a new email and continue doing that process. It literally costs you $0. You don't have to buy a course. You don't have to buy a mentorship. You don't have to buy anything. $0 to find out what your edge is in the markets. That's what has helped me out the most. And I hope this video helps out somebody. I know I rambled a lot. If you have any questions at all, drop them in the comment sections below, and I'm going to respond. I'm going to respond with them as fast as I humanly can. And until next time, brothers and sisters.